welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Back at it with another video. Wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive, kind of looking at some of the mutable squares going on this week. And in particular, I want to talk to you guys about the transits that are happening today, December 1st. Happy December, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. You know, I do the weekly Astro Weather videos and I talk about what's kind of coming up. We go in depth and we talk about the aspects also in the monthly review, but like looking at the transits for November 30th through like December 2nd, some pretty complex astrology. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of my hot takes on what's going on with some of these mutable squares. So lots of them ahead. This is your forewarning. Some of the events that are taking place today are going to be, depending on your natal placements, there are positive aspects to this. It can be something that is very inspirational, magical, spiritual, and intuitive, but it also can be a little bit of like a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. So I put together some stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about, just bringing up some important points in regards to these mutable squares. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer. I focus on taking a look at the current transits in the cosmos, how it's affecting us collectively, and I work with tarot and the Sabian symbols to decode what's going on. If you like my content, make sure you hit the button below and you're subscribed. We've always got new content coming out, and if you haven't already seen them, we do have December horoscopes, so make sure you guys check that out. All right, so essentially, we are making our way towards what is getting ready to be a full moon in Gemini pretty soon. So that's going to be coming up here in about a week's time. Put that video out for you guys if you want to see how it's affecting each of the 12 signs. I go in depth and talk about why it's so action-packed. But this is the last quarter square today, okay? So if you're somebody who likes to track the moon, not many people realize that there are more aspects that really take place sometimes with the moon than any other planetary aspects. The moon is the planet that moves the fastest, changing about every 2.5, almost 3 days. But the moon is usually the main kind of, culprit for creating some adventures, at least in this situation with the mutable squares. The moon changing does affect our mood. So where and what sign the moon moves into, what planetary aspects it makes, definitely can really shape up the feeling of how we're kind of feeling day to day. I've talked to you guys a lot about how while we're in the midst of mutable transit, so we had this when we had Virgo season, we had a ton of planets that were in Virgo that were opposing Neptune in Pisces, and also was coming into a square with Mars that was just entering into Gemini. Now we have a slew of planets that are hanging out in the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius. Super positive, optimistic, freedom loving, travel loving, all about philosophy and like the bigger picture of life. Super active in the skies right now, having Sun and Mercury and Venus there in opposition to Mars, right? So if you get into the hang of like learning the lunar transits and seeing how the moon is kind of waxing and waning throughout its cycles, you'll kind of get a feel for when there's energy that's building up and when there's energy that's being cleared out and kind of broken down. So when I say it's the last quarter square, this is the last square since we had that most recent full moon and new moon cycle. Now it's coming into the full moon and it's in the last sign before the moon is going to reach Gemini. So when we see the moon in the last quarter square, it feels almost like there's tension building. There's some crisis that's kind of brewing and some action that we need to take really as a result of this lunar transit, and it will be leading all the way up to the full moon that we're gonna have in a week. So you guys might feel that the energy today is kind of chaotic, right? Because we have so many planets that are coming into conjunction in Pisces with a square to a stellium in Sagittarius, a square to Mars in Gemini. What we call this is a mutable T-square, okay? So I've used this analogy before, although it's not great, but when you see an accident, somebody's driving and then somebody gets T-boned and it just kind of hits them out of nowhere, that's the energy of the T-square. So if we have the opposition between Sag and Gemini, which is how we communicate, the information we relay, what we're reading in the newspaper, what we're reading in social media versus what's going on in the big picture the grand scheme of things out in the world. So we already feel like this tug of war between our belief systems or philosophy, which articles we can believe, which, news stations or channels we feel like we can rely on. And then it all comes into this really complex T-square with the moon in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, and Jupiter in Pisces. And Neptune is actually getting ready to station direct. So, in a way, there's so many different ways I could talk about this. Just the Mars-Venus aspects in itself makes me feel like it's been this very competitive, push-pull, romantic, kind of like flirty, a little bit of friction type energy where you really have to work hard to collect or get what it is that you want or what it is that you love. And it can be good. A little bit of friction and competition can be wonderful. Mars and Venus in this aspect can really kind of turn up the heat and get us really interested in romance and kind of playing the game that kind of comes with dating and chasing after other people. Unfortunately, it's been peppered in with a Mercury-Mars opposition, which is interesting because Mercury is traditionally associated with Gemini. So you've got that going, and then it's all coming into squares with Neptune. So that in itself, even outside of the lunar transit, is a lot of like, are you just, telling me what I want to hear? Is this just like lip service? Like, are you really going to walk the walk and talk the talk? It definitely has this energy of possibly getting lost in the illusion of things or the ideal of things because of the squares to Neptune. So what you guys are going to notice today is just a ton. I mean, that's why this video is going to come out first thing in the morning, from about, the early hours, 4 or 5 a.m. Pacific time on. The moon coming into conjunction will be in a square with Venus. It will be in a square with Mercury. It will be in a conjunction to Neptune. It will be in a square to Mars. And this energy is going to last pretty much until the moon actually leaves Pisces. And I will be really glad when the moon leaves Pisces and goes into Aries, because at least it's going to start flowing a little bit better with the sun in Sag, Saturn in Aquarius, sextiles to Mars. So we're going to get out of like this kind of like twilight zone. So for those of you guys who are wondering, like, who is this going to affect the most? First of all, like, I feel like when the moon makes some of these aspects, we feel this collectively. So everybody isn't necessarily going to get a pass here. But if you have planets between 17 and 28 degrees as a mutable sign, so if you're Gemini, Virgo, Sag, or Pisces, sun, moon, rising, right? You're really going to feel that. And that's a pretty wide orb, 17 to 28 degrees. So if you have any placements there, you're very much going to feel this because there's just a ton of squares. I've said this in previous videos, but mutable aspects do deal with changes of the weather. It deals with changes of the season. It also deals with changing our mind, our belief, or like kind of like the story so far. So this energy can be very whimsical with the conjunctions to Neptune. It's like very poetic. It's a great time for kind of getting lost in illusion and fantasy and creating. So if you're a creative, it's wonderful energy, but it's not analytical, right? It's not great for signing contracts. It's not great for gaining clarity on something. It's not great for being able to get the point across. That's more going to be emotional than it is going to be literal. Moon conjunct Neptune is very sensitive and it has a tendency to retreat. We've got a debilitated Mercury in Sagittarius, which definitely likes to tell tall tales. And it's just coming into its square with Neptune as well. So Mercury and Sag in general, especially with the opposition to Mars, we can see some competitiveness in terms of communication and difference of opinions, which can turn into some heated debates. But it's definitely going to be as a result of how the collective is responding to information. So this is one of those days that I would tell you be careful with resharing articles, making sure you can cite your sources, maybe waiting for the media to cool off for a day or two before you go freaking out about something that you're hearing in the news, because a lot of things are likely to be very overly inflated. Just kind of hearing, I mean, this isn't my forte, but just, I thought it was interesting because I remember looking at Venus coming into opposition with Mars and in a square to Neptune. I was like, okay, we might see like a little pop in the market where there's like more optimism because of the Venus square Neptune. And come to find out, like the interest rates weren't, I guess, raised as high as anticipated. So there in turn, there's the pop. So I think that what we're actually going to find once Venus and Mercury are finally coming out of the square with Jupiter as well as Neptune, that optimism might actually begin to fade. Now that's more so leading into the end of December. We're gonna have Mercury retrograde, it's gonna be close to Pluto. So we're really actually gonna start to feel the effects of what's really going on economically, what's really happening with our resources, what's really happening with job numbers in corporate companies. And we're gonna see the facts start to kind of really come out coming into the new year. So, you know, when you see Venus in opposition to Mars, we're really eager to get something going. We see Venus in a square to Neptune, there is a potential to kind of like overly idealize something or kind of gloss over the details. So it's wholly mutable squares. I mean, you know, just me personally, it's like this energy, I'm kind of entertained by it the last like 72 hours. I've been kind of like, okay, this is interesting because I don't have any mutable placements in my chart. I'm all fixed and all cardinal and in angular houses. So for me to kind of move through some of these transits, I'm like, okay, everything's constantly changing, right? So I started thinking about, you know, what does that mean for us? And like, how can we use today as an opportunity to really see it as like a mirror for creating the life that we want and not falling victim into some of the lower octaves of Neptune and becoming like kind of like hysterical or fearful. So throughout this transit, you know, you're going to see it unfold over the next couple of days, and you may feel a number of different ways. You know, this is a general reading, but, you know, generally when the moon is in conjunction to Neptune, we feel a little bit more dreamy, sleepy. We might also feel like we're swimming in the cosmic soup. The moon in Pisces transit will do that anyway, but when it's in conjunction to Neptune, it's going to be like doubly. I'm going to read you guys the Sabian symbol for that 22, 23 degrees of Pisces because it's really interesting. I think what's kind of agitating also is the fact that the moon is going to be coming into a square with Mars. And to me, that feels like tempers are flaring, agitation. People are not as communicative. They're not getting back to us very well also because we have the moon that's in a square to Mercury. So there's a lot of like, oh my God, they haven't called. Why didn't we hear anything? There's no response. Like what's happening? And like our mind can kind of like stay on the hamster wheel all day long. But there's also this tendency sometimes with conjunctions in Pisces to be passive and to withdraw and not want to respond because perhaps maybe we don't like it. We don't like the agitation or the friction, or we don't like how quickly things are changing and we don't know how to respond or how to adapt to that. So we'll withdraw into our office, or we'll, you know, go and take a nap, or there's other Pisces habits like drinking and substances that can also be what Pisces represents. So you guys want to be mindful that this is a day where you're going to feel energetically like it's just easier to check out. It's easier to just be like, leave me alone. Let me go binge my Netflix and escape from the world because I don't really know how to cope. So emotional health, mental health, like that's something that you guys want to watch for. I know I've heard from a lot of my mutable sign people that they're just kind of like, this is insanity because you're dealing with like some very turbulent squares, which is really affecting your reality. We've got the moon square Mercury and Venus, which makes us moody, especially when it comes to changes of the mind, right? So it's interesting to see Venus and Mercury moving side by side, which is very much talking about what we love, but it's coming into this friction with Mars where it's like we're having to rethink our actions to really kind of broaden our horizons when it comes to what we know about love, what we know about finances, and on a global scale as well because it's in Sagittarius. These squares also with Pisces and Sag, you know, we see lots of conflict coming up about cultural indifferences, religious indifferences, and a tendency to kind of highlight those who have been isolated or those who have potentially been taken, you know, out of society or cast aside or mistreated in some way. So it's going to highlight that over this next couple day period as well. It's going to finish up with a conjunction. So we're going to see later in the day, the moon will come into conjunction with Jupiter. So once it starts coming out of that square with Venus and Mercury and Mars, it moves away from Neptune. Later in the day, it's going to be like after 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. The moon will then come into conjunction with Jupiter. So that's going to be actually closer to like 5:45-ish Pacific time. So in the evening, basically tonight, it finishes off its finale with a conjunction to the moon, Jupiter aspect. So it's like, you know, big feelings, things that get magnified. There can be a sense of this like feeling of like a tipping point, or that something is just about to change, because it is the late degrees of Pisces. Pretty soon, Jupiter is going to move later this month back into the sign of Aries, and it's going to be igniting like a brand new cycle, right? So, you know, T-squares, man, bringing into focus the theme of Pisces and what it means to release and let go and let things fade away or let things dissolve, where it benefits us to consciously take some time to kind of be on our own, to take 15 minutes to meditate, to stay a little bit longer in the shower, to just kind of clear, or soak in a bathtub, or take a walk by the beach. These are all things that can be really helpful if you're really kind of struggling with some of the destabilizing aspects of this. But I think of like faith and fantasy, and the ability to be able to override what sometimes can feel like a very challenging, changeable, unstable, you know, world. For a lot of people, you know, the later degrees of Pisces really feels sometimes like insanity, and this pressure cooker that's building because you know that it's on the tipping point of just letting everything go. So there's a lot of feeling our way through things today, and the key here is to listen to your intuition. You know, Neptune is getting ready to station. So that's the other thing. When a planet is stationing, it's getting ready to either turn retrograde or turn direct. In this case, it's turning direct. So Neptune is going to end what's been months of a retrograde and finally go into its direct motion, which is positive because anything that hasn't been as clear, where we've been internally clouded or not sure or not know how to move forward, now that's getting ready to shift and it's getting ready to change. Very important for those of you guys who are Pisces, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or if you have any planetary placements really between 21 and 23 degrees of Pisces, you're going to feel this the strongest when planets go direct within, you know, the days or week or so to follow. You will see more Piscean events. So being that, you know, Neptune is connected to the seas, the masses, those who are hidden, those who are in asylums, hospitals, mental wards, concentration camps. It also rules viruses, guys. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about that. Obviously, I'm not here to debate. I will just say that it's a very interesting time to see all of the planets move through Sagittarius, which is talking about the global consensus of the research and information, especially stuff that's coming out of like research institutions, you know, college, you know, research programs, other things like that. And where it's in the opposition to Mars, which is the media, and the square to Neptune and Jupiter. So there's like this realization that's like, wait a second, what we thought we knew, Mars retrograde, is differing from what we're finding out or what we're coming to believe, right? Sagittarius. And then the squares to Jupiter and Neptune is like people being like, oh my God, you know, and it's not limited to just that. So I don't want this to turn into like a debate about vaccines, because personally, I don't want to do that on my channel. But it can be a multitude of different things. Just this realization that the storyline somehow is changing. So if you're looking at your natal chart, you want to look at where Pisces is, the actions taking place in that house today, maybe even a little bit of last night or tomorrow, give it like a 3-day window, is definitely very much changing, and it's initiating some changes. It's asking you to be a little bit more intuitive in this area of your life. And it's definitely challenging the Sagittarius and the Gemini area of your life. So Godspeed, Virgos, Sun, Moon, and Rising. You guys are definitely feeling it. But like I said, even people like me who has zero mutable placements in my chart, I'm like, this is just so incredibly wild to just see so many things just changing at one time. So yeah, keep in mind that, you know, Neptune stationing direct on the 3rd is part of this. And even though a lot of my discussion today is really a lot more about Neptune and the moon transit through Pisces, believe it or not, really what it was intended to be more about was the fact that you are going to feel the Mars retrograde so incredibly hard today, okay? If you weren't already feeling it yesterday on the 30th, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna feel the Mars retrograde. It's becoming a little bit more pronounced. Part of that is because we've had the Mercury-Mars opposition, which is a little combative. It's a little bit of friction. The Venus-Mars opposition feels like, okay, we can kind of smooth it over. We can kind of, you know, pull each other's pigtails a little bit and pick on each other. We can smooth it over, but it's going to feel more intense when the moon and Neptune square Mars, because it's going to be an agitated moon that doesn't know how to respond, and it may be a little bit more passive aggressive. In the days ahead, we're going to see the sun come into opposition with Mars as well. And that will be right around the time of the full moon. So actually, it's very action-packed from here on out. And I think a lot of the placements in Pisces is really saying that without faith or without taking action, there can be a sense of feeling like certain things are just dissolving or certain things are falling apart, right? But yeah, the Mars retrograde is going to be felt pretty strongly. Anytime planets are going through the mutable signs, you know, really throughout this particular season, we're going to feel this. So whether the moon's in Sag or Pisces or Gemini or Virgo, it's going to reactivate some of these squares, and it's going to bring up a lot of the emotional friction that's kind of coming up with the aspects to Mars. So when I sat down and I really kind of thought about this, because that's what I like to do before I like put together these videos and talk to you guys a little bit about my food for thought, I was thinking about it, and something really strange came to mind. When I was younger, I used to really love reading like Alice in Wonderland. Like I liked any of like the fantasy stories and the books and all of that stuff. And I don't remember which one it was, so I apologize, but I know that it was a part of the Alice in Wonderland like series, because I know there were other books. But when I was meditating, thinking about these transits, what kept coming to mind was Through the Looking Glass. And I was like, Through the Looking Glass, what is that from? And then I was like, oh, it's Alice in Wonderland. And so I think that, you know, those of you guys who are not aware, the looking glass is not necessarily a magnifying glass, although I guess some mirrors can magnify. It's more about a mirror. That was more like a Victorian term for mirror. And I kept thinking, wow, how significant to see the moon come into conjunction with Neptune, which can be about reflections, emotional reflection, intuitive reflection, you know, what we're seeing in our dreams, reflecting on the symbolism. And it's in a square to Venus, which is literally about mirrors and our appearance and kind of like vanity. And then I kept thinking like, well, how does that relate to this? And then the more that I sat with it, I was like, okay, it's about magnifying things that can seem mystical and magical, and catching fragments of the light, which is definitely something that we see whenever we see lunar aspects, because the sun may shine a light on something, but when we're actually looking at a full moon, that's the magnification of the light that's actually coming from the moon. So the moon is building into a full moon pretty soon. But the looking glass in particular, like I said, it's associated with, you know, a mirror in Victorian times. It can have like a foil backing. Like obviously that's what mirrors are, those of you guys who aren't aware, and you're able to kind of look at it and you're able to reflect. Now, like mirrors have been used throughout, you know, history in all kinds of like magical things, for occult purposes, rituals, for summoning. A lot of people will use it as, you know, a way to have self-reflection, to be able to stare and set intentions or practice mantras. But I think that this is a little bit deeper. Like what was coming up for me in terms of the looking glass, I think is talking more so about being able, like in Alice in Wonderland, to look at the backward version of normal things, right? Because, you know, the whole story is like crazy, the potions and all the different characters and all that stuff. But I think when Lewis Carroll put this together, she was talking more so about doing things backwards, the opposite. And sometimes not everything is what it seems. And sometimes we have to work backwards in order to be able to figure out, okay, what does this mean? What direction is it going in? Obviously, everything in these storylines are very much tied to like symbolism. But I think it's also talking about cause and effect, right? And so you guys are going to see a lot of cause and effect with this transit. That's why I'm bringing this up. When we have squares to Mars, there are actions. When we have squares to Venus and Mercury, we have conversations. So you may need time to stop and reflect and kind of look at things, right? I believe this was from the sequel. The more that I think about it, I'm not sure. Maybe you guys know, but I know it was one of the series. But I think the phrase through the looking glass is more so kind of connected to like a metaphor where it's a time where like the world suddenly appears unfamiliar. Like things are just totally different, almost as things are like turned upside down. And like I said, it's very topsy-turvy. Similar to looking out from the inside of a mirror, only to find that, you know, both worlds are like unrecognizable. That's kind of what today is going to feel like. You're going to be like, what is going on? This is super weird. The perception of things are turning and it's going to seem like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But the deeper that I dug into this, I was like, what if this is actually symbolism in terms of how she's using it to convey like the harsh effects of reality, right? Which, okay, in anything for right now, capitalism and how it's about unstable greed, you know, the never-ending desire to be able to kind of form a better like lifestyle. We're idealizing something and it just seems out of reach. Anything that's going on right now, just the fact that things can get very convoluted if we do not ground ourselves in reality. Now, I don't want this to sound like Debbie Downer. I don't really think that this is about it being a negative transit. I think it's about really focusing on being grounded in our faith, in our practice of faith, whether that's chanting, meditation, yoga, taking 15 minutes to just be by yourself, whatever, to ground this energy out, because it's going to feel hard to drown out some of the noise that's going to be going on today. And likely there's going to be some things that are going to feel like are definitely out of our comfort zone. So takeaways for me, just kind of reflecting on what I have learned through that particular series of Alice in Wonderland, is the need to believe in magic, but also there in turn madness, right? If you guys think of going and sitting with the Mad Hatter and being able to kind of have your tea party and talking to all of the different various characters that kind of come from that, to me, the Moon, Neptune, Jupiter conjunction with a square to all the Sag and Mars definitely feels like it's magic that may come in the form of madness. So pick which side of the tea party you want to sit in today. It's going to really be your decision. It's all about your perspective and how you're going to look at it. And I think what's also true about this series is something that Alice learns is that she has to actually go into the glass. She can't not drink the potion and, you know, go down the rabbit hole. She can't not participate in some of these magical things, which actually acts as a portal into that world, right? And so I think when the Moon and Neptune and Jupiter come together, which I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this might be one of the last transits where we're going to have the Moon with Neptune and Jupiter because it's moving in this next month. This is the portal, right? This is that window to basically be like, look, it's a mad world out there, but I'm up for an adventure. But do read the fine print, because there's going to be a lot of things that are going to seem really, really, really good, too good to be true. Or there's going to be like this sense of just feeling like you're melting. And if that's where you are, it's totally okay. Now you have the understanding why. But you have to be willing to go into the looking glass and see what's on the other side. Because if you're not crazy about the reality that you're in, you're going to create a new one. Advice can come from the most unexpected places. And that's what I really love about the Alice in Wonderland series, is the fact that, you know, whether she's talking to the caterpillar or the hatter or, you know, the rabbit, whatever, it doesn't matter. She was getting bits and pieces of advice from people along the way. But likely it was from like inanimate objects and things that you wouldn't quite notice until they just kind of, you know, caught her eye, right? So today, as the Moon's coming into conjunction with Neptune and Jupiter, something I want you guys to think about is that advice can come from the most unusual places. I don't care if you see a license plate and it's got, you know, like 1111 on it. I don't care if you drop a book and you open it up and that page has excellent advice for you. If you get like a strange, you know, bit of advice from somebody on the subway, if you have somebody who just texts you out of nowhere and says they had a dream about you, if you just feel inclined to sit down and pull a couple tarot cards, whatever it is you have to do, there is advice that's coming from the cosmos, but only if you're able to kind of silence your mind and tune in and receive it. And don't overlook those who may be giving you advice also, but just be careful with whose advice you buy. And I think the other thing that was an amazing lesson from the Alice in Wonderland series is that it's okay to be silly and whimsical, that it's okay to like look at things sometimes and just shake your head and go like, this is just madness. But also to be able to play and to be creative and whimsical and visionary and being able to really get into telling a story or being able to share an experience and express yourself in a way that might be more youthful or it might be more fun, right? Jupiter is known obviously for, you know, being able to be the king of all of the gods in mythology, but I think that people don't realize that he's also like, he's a bit of a jokester, right? Not like Mercury, who's trying to kind of turn tricks, but somebody who can laugh and be jolly, super Jupiter. And I think that it's about teaching and learning about ourselves a lot, and like learning how to laugh at ourselves and not take things too personally, because it's very clear between the planets coming in the late degrees of Sag and the planets in the late degrees of Pisces, in these two areas of your life and your chart, that's where something very significant is changing. So if you're somebody like me who needs humor sometimes to get through the harshness of reality, it's okay to laugh at some of these things today. You'll see though, like I said, crisis in action, feeling like through this last 3/4 square that we're swimming through the cosmic soup, and that there may be events that push us to make change over the next 48 hours. And it's better to do it so you have a game plan in a week when we have that full moon. And I think it's really important for us to be tuning into what's going on in our lives right now. And if we don't like what we're creating, we don't want to just bypass what's happening and like, you know, check out and say, hey, you know, that's not my reality, but I don't want to participate in creating something new. So I'm just going to kind of just zone out, because that's going to put a lot of people in a position where they're going to be feeling like they have to scramble when the time of the full moon comes. Now, in a lot of ways, we're going to be dealing with this extended Mars square Neptune clear into March. So it's not like something that's imperative that you change right now. There is a need to be more creative and open and feeling inspired and aware of what actions we're taking. But it's so important this particular day to take the time and really be envisioning and actively working with our imagination, working with our Neptune to really focus on manifesting the life that we want, and also believing that life can be different, believing that these things can change. So it's an amazing day for vision boarding, photography, if you're a filmmaker, a writer, a poet, a musician, a creative, really taking time to work with this energy, because it can be the focal point that diffuses a lot of this really harsh opposition between Gemini and Sagittarius. It takes a little bit of faith, basically, to make some of these changes happen. I also think that it's about riding the waves and focusing on the release. That's what Pisces teaches us, that in the end, it all kind of comes out in the cosmic wash. And, you know, if it's time to let something go, or if it's time to open up to new realities, then we have to actually be open to doing that. We cannot self-sabotage. A lot of this is indicating that we need to be making changes, but that also means that we need to be more open to adapting to new environments, new belief systems, new ways of communicating, being able to pivot and not stepping aside, tuning out, or self-sabotaging. Now, when the moon gets into Taurus, things are going to get a little bit more stable. So once we see that ingress happen, that will get easier. It'll be in a couple days. The moon is going to move late tonight into Aries. So as soon as it moves into Aries, over the next few days, it's going to come into trines with the sun, which will be very helpful on the 2nd. So tomorrow you guys will start to see that stabilize. Pretty feisty, right? Because we're going to see it trine the sun. So we're going to feel like action and emotions are coming together. It will also start sextiling Mars. Keep in mind that both the Mercury square Jupiter is still perfecting, the Venus square Neptune is still perfecting. So still not the easiest energy when it comes to financial transactions, business transactions, relationships. Like there can be a lot of like something looks really good, and then when you actually see it in person, whether it's a person, it's an apartment, it's a car, it's a job, getting there and realizing like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So we're still in that energy for a little bit, but I think the moon going into Aries tomorrow is going to help. And we see even more stability that's going to be happening when the moon eventually goes into Taurus, but that's not going to be closer until the 4th. So early in the morning on the 4th, the moon goes into Taurus and it begins to stabilize. Yes, it's going to touch with the North Node, it's going to square Saturn, it's going to do its thing, but it will be easier to manage. So too long didn't listen, right? Today, pretty much through like the evening of the 3rd, buckle up, because what is it that they say when you go on the the Pirates of the Caribbean, it says like beyond there be dragons. I think, is that the phrase? There's a lot of Disney people out there, so I'm sure you guys will correct me, but it's kind of the vibe that I'm getting, that we're going into some uncharted territory, and there's need to be hopeful and inspired and open, but also grounded in our spiritual routine, because actions have consequences. Things that we say that may not be true, things that we overly idealize, stories that we stretch, and also the information that we may be rejecting because we're unwilling to actually actively participate in being able to find the truth. In spite of all of the confusion that's going on right now, I thought it would be helpful actually to pull a couple tarot cards. So I pulled a couple cards to see what basically just general overall, what the theme is for this, and like what the cards are indicating can be helpful in terms of navigating this transit. So I'll read that for you in a second. I pulled cards from the Ethereal Vision Illuminated Tarot deck, a very kind of Neptune Piscean. I love this deck. So I'll show that to you guys in a second. Let me read you the Sabian symbol now that I've gotten through my spiel, and you can make your own decision as to whether or not you think that this applies. As always, I always use my Sabian symbol book to kind of further just like, digest and break down what's going on with the transits. So I'm going to read page 386, and this is for 23 degrees of Pisces. And the reason being because Neptune is at 22 and change, and the moon will cross 22. So we're going to read 23. But if you want some extra credit, you could actually read 21 and 22. My jaw dropped. If you guys saw my earlier videos where I was talking about how crazy I thought it was that they were saying that a bunch of like religious leaders were going up to Mount Sinai and they were going to go and redo the 10 Commandments. This is real. You guys can Google this. And they've been talking about doing that and how it relates to climate change. Pisces 22, a man bringing down a new law from Sinai. The keyword is mandate. The theme is a higher authority. So you guys can go and read that, but I think you get where I'm coming from. But it talks a lot about ethics and moral integrity, which might come into question over the next couple of days. All right, but we're going to read 23. So let's not go down the conspiracy path. All right, so Pisces 23, spiritist phenomenon. The keyword is sensitivity. The theme, strange things happening. The symbol speaks to the materialization of a higher reality, or the ability of a man to tap into potential that he can manifest according to his particular will and desire. The image of a spiritualist phenomenon emphasizes the power of the mind and the importance of focus and mental discipline. The challenge in this degree is on learning how to break through the conditioning effects of experience and develop a greater sensitivity to the possibilities of what yet can be achieved. The key is not allowing the self to become distracted by the allure of every passing whim and fancy or the trivial problems of everyday living. On a practical level, the image alludes to psychic phenomenon and often entertaining activities of the invisible world. It also suggests cosmic comedies, practical jokes, gremlins, or the mysterious cause of those things that unexpectedly go wrong, break, disappear, or change in some way. At its highest, the symbol represents psychic sensitivity, a highly refined attunement to higher potential of all things, and a powerful depth of focus that leads to significant achievements. Watch for confusion, nervousness, instability, a tendency to easily distract. Today, the accent is on strange events that may disrupt business as usual. Things could go wrong or turn out unexpectedly. Your greatest advantage lies in understanding the greater significance being revealed when things don't go as planned, or when patterns and habits are suddenly broken. Be sensitive to the opportunities created by the changing confusion. Guard against creating your own chaos by refusing to discipline yourself or establish order in your life. Avoid trying to be everywhere at once in a frantic attempt not to miss everything that's going on. Learn to sit still and listen. Stepping stones, telekinesis, psychic phenomenon, practical jokes, things that are peculiar, quirks, unexplained happenings, and gremlins. Interesting. It makes me laugh when Jupiter and Neptune were conjuncting at this degree. It was in my 6th house, and it was right when my now a 1-year-old French bulldog. He's like a bulldog. He's like a bowling ball. He's 40 pounds. He's huge. But it was right when he was about 6 months old, and it was like, if you guys have seen Frenchies, you know that they're like really cute for the first 3 months, and then they're just like terrors. They're like hell on wheels, and they look like little gremlins with their ears. And I remember looking at that degree and just kind of laughing, being like, oh, it's going to be fine. And he was a nightmare. he'd go missing, he'd run around, he'd hide under couches. Like there were things that would just like go missing all the time. Usually it's like socks or bras. You guys know if you have dogs. But very much, I think it doesn't necessarily, in this case, mean that it has to be pets, but it's about little things that kind of go missing or kind of drive you crazy, right? For some people, it's like my family always used to make jokes about like the sock gnomes, right? You put socks in the dryer and then they go missing. But it can literally be the little things that catch your attention that can seem kind of weird, that are trying to get you to think about what's really going on, or things that are kind of happening behind the scenes to get you to slow down and kind of tap in. All right, so I asked the cards, what do we need to be aware of? Like, what is going to happen as a result of this transit, and what's the best advice that you can give me? So I did just a general 5-card spread, and there's no particular spread, card by card for this. It's just me kind of reading it like a storyline. So the first card that I got was the Queen of Swords, which I think is interesting because this is definitely talking about air energy, mercurial energy, direction, being able to kind of speak your concerns, being able to teach something to someone, being able to really harness and nurture your ability to also intuit information. So this can be talking about this being really particularly significant for air placements, okay? So if you're an air placement, if you're a Gemini, if you're a Libra, if you're an Aquarius, or it can be talking about going back and forth with somebody who you're having a conversation with that might strike an idea, or somebody who's talking to you about how to like nurture something, how to edit something, how to better communicate something. Maybe it's telling us to be more nurturing and aware of just our words and how we're thinking and how that's actually being relayed to other people, and paying more mind to how we're communicating with other people, right? Because this is more sensitive, it's more feminine. So then the next card that I got was the Chariot, which is interesting because this is a card that is associated with the moon. It's associated with Cancer. So for this transit to be taking place and the Chariot to come up, very interesting. So especially those of you guys who are like, I'm learning how to better communicate my feelings. I'm learning how to better communicate with my family. I'm learning how to better manage what's going on with my household, or just talking to people about how I'm feeling, right? The Chariot talks about getting all your ducks in a row. So really checking the car before you go on the long road trip, making sure that you're really thoroughly searching for the appropriate home before you move, right? This can be about movement, cars, or transition. But this can also be about being mindful with the Queen of Swords and using your foresight or your intuition, or making sure you have clarity before you go anywhere. So definitely the next couple days, the next week, with these Mars opposition and squares, because of extreme weather, because of people who are distracted while they're driving, because of people who may be impaired because of the conjunctions to Neptune, be very mindful when you're traveling and when you're going places. But also this is about using your intuition to guide you. In the traditional deck, you actually see that there's like the man that's standing in the chariot, and it's kind of draped with this material that's covered in stars. And so it can also be talking about having the foresight of like knowing what's going on in the cosmos before you make a move. So some of you guys might be looking at the astrology who know what's going on. You follow the transits, you watch my channel and probably other people's as well. And they're telling you like flashing lights, like slow down, like the ones that you see when you have pedestrians, That's what I see in the cosmos right now. And it's not just so much about slowing down and watching for an accident, but for making an error, for leaping into something because we're afraid, for making decisions out of fear, right? And not really listening to our gut. So I think that's what this is saying, is really paying attention and having the foresight before you make any moves or you make any long journeys. The next card that I got was the Two of Swords, and I was like, really? It was like one of those situations where like you're pulling tarot cards and you kind of like know what the tarot is going to say. I can't think of Mars in Gemini retrograde or like mutable T-squares. Like Two of Swords definitely is something that comes up for me. Feeling indecisive and not knowing how to make a decision, and perhaps maybe feeling pressed to make a decision with the Chariot coming before this card. And I think it can also be suggesting that the pressure doesn't necessarily justify the fact that you need to quickly make a decision, right? Somebody else's emergency does not constitute one on your behalf. Really think about that. If somebody's pushing you to sign something, agree to something, be somewhere, rush, just totally overload your schedule, Or if you're feeling like you're stuck between two decisions and you have to make one very quickly, taking time and stepping back and thinking about it and not feeling like you have to do something immediately. Still not an easy energy, because this talks about kind of feeling like you're between a rock and a hard place, right? Then I get the Ace of Swords. So there's a lot of swords energy here, huh? Lots of mental energy, which totally makes sense. Not a lot of emotional energy, not a lot of earth. There's nothing that's really grounded here. But the Ace of Swords is about initiating, having a conversation. So this can be simple as, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? Or, hey, why is this missing from the email? Can you explain to me why I didn't hear from you? Is everything okay? Not jumping to conclusions. Ace of Swords is also about contracts, negotiations, new information. And what I like about the Ace of Swords is that it does promise something new, and it's about taking action. So similar to all the other aces, it represents a new phase, but swords can be used to direct energy, but they can also be used to draw a line in the sand. So there can be a sense of needing to be very clear and very firm about your boundaries, and there's no mincing of words with this card, right? So this can also be saying, like, because this is associated with the element of air, that you're in preparation. You know that you have to pull the trigger in some way within the next few days, next few weeks, especially leading up to the full moon in Gemini, that we need to take some kind of action. So it can be about making new proposals, amending something, going in and renegotiating, or sending something back to somebody and waiting for them to kind of edit it. But it's about committing to your words and your ideas and making it very clear. I was very relieved with the outcome card, which was the Queen of Coins, the very first Earth card that we got in this spread, the only one. And this talks about an initiation, right? So we see the queens, they mature from the Queen of Cups, which is very dreamy and lovable and youthful, to the Queen of Wands, who's very bold, and she's about growth and what she's creating and her passions and her desires. The Queen of Swords, which is about information and knowledge. And there's also a sense of really knowing her stuff. She's been through life. She's had life experiences. And then the full maturation to the Queen of Coins, which is feeling grounded, feeling financially secure, healthy, abundant, and really focused on being able to make well-rounded decisions when it comes to her finances, her health, and her family, right? So if you're somebody who's like, I got to make the decision that's best for me, health-wise, financially, in terms of feeling grounded, then that seems to be the outcome, as long as you're more so sticking to your guns when it comes to being like, this is the life that I'm creating, or this is my truth. Ace of Swords can be, this is my truth. And the final outcome either being kind of more stable and secure and, feeling like you have more opportunity in front of you, or actually feeling like you do land on your feet and everything stabilizes. It can also be talking about financial support or some kind of guidance coming from more like maternal energies. So, grandmothers, mothers, aunties, people who could be therapists who are going to be coming in, also like healthcare providers or healers who are also helping you kind of find the solid ground. But in the end, this is basically saying like you end up having a mature or like a maturation process when it comes to your finances and your health, and feeling a lot more stable. So you might be looking for this this Queen of Swords or this Queen of Coins in your life throughout this week. It's always helpful to get a little bit of insight from the tarot. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. And this is a little bit more of like a fun, hot take on what's going on with the astrology. I'd love to hear how you guys are feeling with this energy. You guys can come back the next couple days if you want, leave me some comments, especially as some of those gremlin moments kind of grab you through the transits throughout the next couple of days. I will be back on Saturday, so I'll be back and I'll be doing live readings. It looks like we're going to be doing live astrology readings, so I'll make sure I post the link. I'll try to get that out today. That way it's out early. You guys can sign up. Usually we have a ton of people who want to come and take a look at their natal chart and their transits on Saturday nights. So if you do for sure want to get a reading, you want to make a donation, it's all donation based. It goes back into creating content for the channel. I would love to see you there. We're going to be here 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. That'll be Saturday night. donation-based readings. We can take a look at aspects in your natal. You can ask questions about that. You can also ask questions in terms of transits or synastry. Super fun. We're seeing more and more people show up. Sometimes people just want to hang out and they want to watch and they want to learn. It's a great way also to get a little bit of a snippet as to what it's like to either have a one-on-one session with me privately, or if you want to learn astrology, it's a great resource to learn how astrology works in action and see counseling skills, but it's fun. It's on the internet, right? But I would love to see you guys there if you want to join. And also in closing, if you guys have not already seen my Astro 2023 calendar, it's out. It has all the transits for the year ahead, all kinds of magical recommendations from incense to oils to ritual stuff. If that's something that you want to do to really make magic in 2023, those are on my website. You can click that below. And today will be the last day that we are offering $100 off. We have a sale going on for my Astro 201. So at the end of today, prices are going to go up between now and New Year's. I'm going to be teaching my next phase of astrology. I'm going to talk to you guys all about working with lunar return charts, solar return charts, progressions. We're going to talk a little bit more about relationship astrology and transits and learning to start making predictions, looking at transits in the natal chart. I'm going to talk to you guys about my book recommendations, my software recommendations. It will be every Saturday. Every Sunday. It'll be every Sunday, starting on January 22nd. We're going to be meeting at 10 a.m. Pacific time in the mornings, and it's going to roll for about 8 weeks. So those of you guys who want to learn with me one-on-one in my digital classroom, I invite you to join me. You'll be able to sign up really all the way up until then, but this is going to be the best price that you're going to get literally all year. Spaces are limited, and if you guys want to check out some of my other courses that I have below, go to my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. You can check it out. You can also see my calendar if you'd like to book with me. I'm booking in March and April. So if you guys want to talk to me, I'm a busy lady. Catch me on Saturday, or you can go and book a reading with me on my website. I hope today is magical for you, and I hope that you guys are catching all the cosmic sprinkles from some of these mutable T-squares. Stay grounded. That's the best advice I can give you. And I will see all of you guys very soon on Saturday and Sunday. Go watch that full moon video if you haven't already. I talk more about how it's leading up to a very climactic point with that full moon in Gemini. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.